Since that failed attempt to rewrite history, the multiverse is effectively being torn to shreds. Jordanian small fries have been sent to collect more information, but they have no idea what is actually happening. I think we just got our first breakthrough. Sally Acorn was found by Jordanian inquisitors in the former teleportation room. Sally Acorn, the fictional character from Archie Sonic. The existence of fictional characters has always been a question when it comes to alternate realities, but Sally's very existence has answered that question. I mean, before that, I think it was just me hallucinating. I think. But she looks different than any other incarnation of the character that I know about. She has cybernetics, but she's also Mobian. Jordanian Inquisitors have tried to find out more information, but the trauma from the crash seems to have jumbled her memories. I am taking over this case in hopes of having better luck.
I'm being interrogated?
More interviewed. You don't remember anything at all?
I remember some things, but they feel jumbled.
Okay. I think what's the best thing to do is run everything that we think we know about you, and that might spark some memories. You hear a lot about console wars these days, but to me, those aren't console wars. They are minor skirmishes with some dumb console fanboys who have nothing better to do with their sorry, miserable lives. Was that too harsh? Nothing compares to the sheer brutality of the one true console war. Sega versus Nintendo during the 1990s.
It sounds like a horrible war.
Nah, it was over video game consoles. Life was simpler back then.
Oh, I see.
Sega was trying to overthrow Nintendo, Sonic was born out of a contest for a new company mascot, and the release of Sonic the Hedgehog on the Sega Genesis changed everything. But that doesn't tell the full story. The success of the Sega Genesis and Sonic the Hedgehog was due to the creative and financial independence of Sega of America. Sega of America, or SOA, up until relatively recently, could be considered a separate company from the main headquarters of Sega in Japan, or SOJ. That wasn't by accident. They were afforded broad autonomy from SOJ by President Hayao Nakayama. The Sega Genesis was to be successful by any means necessary. And he tasked president of SOA, Tom Kalinske, recruited from Mattel of all places, to make it happen. That would eventually include making Sonic successful, and what is a successful franchise without a cartoon show? It eventually brought about the development of two shows, both by DiC Animation. You know, the ones with the creepy intro. DiC. Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog, and another one simply known as Sonic the Hedgehog, later dubbed by fans as Sat-I-Am. Sally Acorn originated from an internal SOA document known as the Sonic Bible, establishing lore for the Blue Blur. It was largely ignored, likely for the best. It was quite weird. But the name for one of the animal critters Sonic saves was named Sally Acorn.
I'm a fictional character from a video game franchise?
Yes, in this reality. But in your reality, you were very much real. Here, I want to show you something. So that critter was chosen as the basis for the female lead of Sat-I-Am. You. But you went through a lot of different designs. This one, then this, to finally this. Do you remember any of them?
I remember most of those other looks. I fell into a vat of acid in Robotropolis. It took months to wash it all out. I don't remember that one, though.
It was an early concept that didn't make it far. It may not have existed in your reality, or took a different form altogether. The idea was to fulfill the damsel in distress role that is unfortunately a cliche then as it was now. But while Sally Acorn, both in the show and comics, would definitely fit that role, she could also be depicted as a strong leader for the freedom fighters against the evil Dr. Robotnik. Any of these folks ring a bell?
It's coming back to me. Sonic, Tails, Rotor, Antoine, Bunny, Amy, and Nicole. We spent our entire lives fighting Dr. Robotnik. All sorts of adventures. And one of them was more than a friend.
Sonic?
No. I can't remember that.
It's alright. We'll continue on. That's what made Sally so initially endearing. She had her own personality and attributes outside of being a love interest for Sonic. While Sat-I-Am would mostly have a consistent characterization of Sally during its run, and for the purposes of this video, we're just going to be focusing on the comic, Yeah, that comic would struggle at times, and that is really being charitable. Nonetheless, throughout the 1990s, she was prominently featured in merchandise, video games, Sonic Spinball, and even an indoor theme park in Sydney, Australia. Why was there a theme park in Australia when these things exist? Honestly, I don't know.
What are those?
It's best you never find out. So we have a character that was included since the beginning of Sonic the Hedgehog, included in tons of merchandise, and had a ton of fans. She was a huge part of Sonic the Hedgehog in the United States and elsewhere. To say otherwise is incorrect. Just as an example, when Sally Acorn was set to be killed off in Sonic the Hedgehog number 50 due to reasons that are so stupid I don't even want to get into them, backlash from both fans and even Sega themselves reversed that decision. But all of that love for you wasn't to last, unfortunately. SOA would see the autonomy that made it so successful eroded by SOJ. This has been discussed and debated on why the sun change occurred, but I think the wild success of the Sega Genesis in the States and Europe made SOJ bitter. Partially due to this, the Sega Saturn was a failure, culminating the departure of Tom Kalinske in 1996. By the close of the 1990s, Satayam characters, locations, and story elements would be removed from the mainline Sonic media in favor of a somewhat more coherent brand identity. Japan never adopted any Satayam-related material for Sonic, actively splitting Sonic into two different versions. American Sonic, which used Satayam or elements of that Sonic Bible I mentioned earlier, and Japanese Sonic, which featured different designs, names, and other things. Starting in 1999 with the release of Sonic Adventure, things would be similar between the two. For instance, Dr. Eggman, which was the Japanese name for Dr. Robotnik, was never used in the States until Sonic Adventure. But there would be elements of compromise. The two names were merged into one: Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik.
Dr. Robotnik and Dr. Eggman were two different beings in this reality.
So, the intention in Archie Sonic was Dr. Robotnik and Dr. Eggman were two different beings. It wasn't until later in the comic that was rolled into one. Same maniac, though. However, there would be an exception to this: Archie Sonic. Archie Sonic would survive the discontinuation of 90s era SOA-led Sonic the Hedgehog media, likely due to its success and Sega being a little more focused on the near death of the entire company. Yikes. But the comic would see a rapid decline in quality by the early 2000s, culminating in Sonic 134.
I remember Sonic and I were in a relationship for a long time, but something happened.
Oh boy, this is where things are going to get really rough. I already did an entire review of this absolute travesty of Sonic-related media, so I'm gonna be brief. At the time, lead writer Carl Ballers had various ideas for how the comic should move forward. Some of them were interesting, others were downright awful. But one idea was to have Sally break up with Sonic and be off on her own adventure involving the source of all. I don't mind the idea of Sally having her own adventures and not being romantically linked to Sonic. That's been a thing with the character since the start. But the execution to reach that goal was disastrous with the infamous slap. This one scene is used in so many dang fights online when anyone asks for the return or acknowledgement of Sally in modern media. I don't even fault them. This is one of the most well-known depictions of the character. I would not want her anywhere near modern Sonic media if this was the only thing that I knew about her. What followed in future issues was a Sally that could be charitably described as an absolute asshole. Gone were the days of being a romantic love interest, but she could still kick some butt. Instead, she was insanely bitter and cruel. Since this was the depiction of the character in official media, that was what fans thought of her as. The fanfiction trope that persists today of Sally being an abuser, a homewrecker, or other negative depictions completely out of character pretty much originates from this time. Although most of the ideas would never come to fruition and Ballers would leave the comic after Sonic 144, the damage was done. Ken Penders, who would take over from Carl after he left, decided not to retcon it and make things even worse. In fairness to Penders, he didn't like it and sought to undo it, but he decided to do it in the shittiest way possible. Sonic the Hedgehog would date Fiona Fox. That is literally out of nowhere. Why? Well, Sally Acorn would, I don't know, have to suffer through an arranged marriage? Ugh. It would all culminate in Sonic the Hedgehog 200, which would feature Sonic and Sally being married. Overall, it didn't fix the issues Sally had under Ballers, but instead removed what little agency Sally had and reduced her down to a boring love interest. Penders would depart the comic after Sonic 159, leaving Ian Flynn to clean up the fine mess that these two created.
Remember, oh Gaia, why do I want to remember that? I apologized to Sonic, we made amends, but I still felt horrible. It was like I wasn't acting like myself. Something took control and then it was over.
When did you feel that this control stopped?
When Croctobot and Scourge attacked Freedom HQ.
Sonic the Hedgehog 160. That was when Ian Flynn took over as lead writer for Sonic. That means that change wasn't only for the comic, but it affected your reality as well. Does this reality have an effect on the others?
You're saying that I was controlled during that time?
You were always controlled, but there was a change in control at that time in this reality. You simply weren't yourself when you slapped Sonic.
Controlled or not, I still feel horrible.
I know. But in this reality, when someone writes you badly, there's only so much you can do. You aren't the first or the last character to have that happen. The arrival of Ian Flynn in our story usually indicates a positive change, and that's somewhat true here. Sally Acorn returned to her role as a kick-butt field leader, swapping her long hair with her classic short hair, and overall improving the character significantly. It's a shame then that future events would wreck all of that. During the events of Iron Dominion, Monkey Khan was positioned as a new love interest for Sally. I do admit it seemed like it was set up in a way where Sally had to be a love interest, although there were 40 issues of this character being written better by the time Iron Dominion came out, so it was fine. Sonic the Hedgehog 207 left things ambiguous, with Sally walking off with Monkey Khan while Sonic left with Amy Rose. It seems like new romantic beginnings were afoot. However, in the Sonicgrams for Sonic 209, a sort of fan art contest was held for a logo for Team Sonali. To say it was a terrible idea would be an understatement. This was at a time when social media was in its infancy, and thank God, because it literally would have been 10 times worse had it been done today. It created an atmosphere of utter hostility between two camps, supporters of Sonali and those who supported Sonami. When all was said and done, Sonali was chosen. I am not sure how much of this contest influenced the outcome, but it still sucks. For Sonami fans, I can understand being disappointed at a potential outcome being disregarded in favor of Sonali. To this day, there's still no official depictions of Sonami in Sonic media, although there's been hints about it here and there in merchandise and things like that. To be teased with the potential of the two being together only to turn around and do the same old thing again, yeah, I kind of understand being upset about it. It caused a lot of fans to hate Sally, as if she took away that romance option. The entire event, as much as I adore Iron Dominion itself, fueled the flames of a conflict that we still see today, and didn't even need to happen in the first place.
Amy Rose was always obsessed romantically with Sonic. It was always one-sided, or at least I thought it was. Sonic didn't mention anything about it to me. Because if I had known they had gone out on a date, I might not have had—
It's alright. Again, things outside of your control. Skipping to 2012, the conclusion of the arc Genesis brought about Mecha Sally. I have to admit that back then I considered it one of the worst choices that Archie Sonic ever made. But I think we've scraped the bottom of the barrel with this comic several times, so this is really not the case. I still admit it was not the best choice for the character, but it was interesting and it sure would have been nice to actually have it concluded. Yeah, you know what probably happens next. The lawsuit between Archie Comics and Ken Penders is to blame. The lawsuit, which I talked about at length elsewhere on the channel, would force a reboot of the canon of the comic, commonly known as the post-Super Genesis wave or post-SGW. Sally Acorn in the post-SGW continuity had a different design that was more in line with Sega standards at the time, lacked the romance with Sonic, and focused more on her leadership role with the Freedom Fighters. It felt like a continuation of the Sally Acorn that had been written since Sonic 160, without all the, baggage from before, It's often incorrectly cited that Sally had no romantic interest in the post-SGW continuity due to Sega instituting new mandates against romance stuff in Sonic-related media. However, those mandates seem to have started after IDW Sonic. As Ian Flint stated in a Bumblecast, the intent was to have Sally and Nicole together instead. I know these were early ideas, and it's unknown how they would have worked, because unfortunately, they never really got off the ground. In fact, the post-SGW wouldn't see any sort of official conclusion. Sonic the Hedgehog was suddenly cancelled in 2017, and Sally hasn't appeared in Sonic media since. Sally?
I remember everything. I know how it worked with Nicole Jordan because we were married.
What? That doesn't make sense.
I don't remember anything about a post-SGW wave. Tails was able to find a cure using a crud sample in the ruins of Albion. After rescuing me from Eggman's Arctic base, I was able to be de-roboticized, although not completely. It was difficult trying to lead the Freedom Fighters again with all of that trauma of being Mecha Sally. I decided to take a leave of absence. Everyone understood. Sonic never could move on from my past as Mecha Sally. I understood that. So many hurtful and deadly things said and done. Nicole was there for me, and we fell in love. But my dad never approved it. I had to marry and produce an offspring. That's how it went. Nicole and I were secretly married, but then all faded to white. And now I'm here.
That rescue was a point of divergence. You're not Sally. You're an alternate Sally. Still Sally, but there's events that did not happen in other realities. You never experienced the post-Super Genesis Wave events. Things went differently. But if this reality can influence the others, then how did you come about?
I don't know. I can't continue without Nicole. Please, where is she?
I don't know. You're the first Mobian to come through those cracks outside.
Can I see them? That does not look natural.
It's not. They started appearing after I went back.
Back where?
I tried to undo Archie versus Ken Penders. Things got worse instead.
The entire multiverse has collapsed, and now everything and everyone is trying to get through to this reality. We need to allow them through. Nicole could be out there.
Absolutely not. We have no idea what might come through.
Jordan, it sounds like I died here suddenly. Do you think that's fair?
No. I don't.
I don't think it's fair to me or others to be robbed of a second chance. It doesn't sound like a second chance will come again.
You've made your point. Maybe I can provide that. It's, worth a shot, anyway. How do you suppose you're gonna fix this mess of mine?
It'll be a bit of a fall, but I think they should be fine. I just need to attach this and...
And away we go.